All right, so we are recording. Whenever you're ready.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting of the East Franklinton Review Board to order. Stephanie, call roll, please.
Mr. Fergus,
Here.
Mr. Way,
Here.
Mr. Bush,
Here.
Mr. Noffi,
Here.
Ms. Benner, here, Mr. Sweeney,
Here.
and Ms. Hamilton. Here. Motion carried.
All right,
We have a forum.
yeah, definitely for, thank you. Staff, will you state your names for the record, please?
Stephanie Kensler.
Nolan Harshaw.
And you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give be true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief.
I do.
Okay, thank you. Let's see. Approval of minutes. Everybody had an opportunity to review the minutes from the last meeting. And are there any additions and corrections? And if not, I would entertain a motion at this time.
Motion to approve.
Motion,
Second.
motion by Mr. Way, second by Mr. Sweeney.
Nope. No, there's
Nope.
Noffi.
Mr. Noffi, okay. Turn that sign around. Call roll, please.
Mr. Fergus,
Approve.
Mr. Way,
Approve.
Mr. Bush,
Approve.
Mr. Noffi,
Approve.
Ms. Benner, approve, Mr. Sweeney,
Approve.
and Ms. Hamilton. Approve. Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, moving on, new applications. Our first application is EF 2306-002. Address is 240 South McDowell Street, Rich and Rich 2. Columbus Metropolitan Housing Authority is the owner, and Griffin Caldwell is the applicant. Staff report, please.
Sure thing. This is EF 2306-002 for 240 South McDowell Street. The applicant is requesting final review and approval of the River and Rich 2 mixed-use development located within the Arts and Innovation Subdistrict. The applicant received conditional approval at the April 2022 meeting and is returning to satisfy the outstanding conditions and with minor architectural modifications. As a reminder, the project would redevelop about 5 acres, currently vacant blocks, and include the following: a 4-story residential building on the southern portion of the site with 114 apartments and a partially covered surface parking lot along the Dodge Park frontage, a 5-story mixed-use building on the northern portion of the site with a 1-level parking garage and amenity deck above. Included in this building is ground floor retail and commercial space fronting Rich Street and wrapping the corner of McDowell Street with 120 apartments above. The proposal includes affordable housing units. There's also a semi-private central landscaped east-west pedestrian use, including murals in the main entry to the southern building, access to the amenity deck at the northern building, and an elevated pedestrian walkway. The proposed parking setback on the south and west property lines is 1 foot. The code establishes a 5-foot minimum. The parking setback modification was previously approved. And then the proposal also requires a lot split in combination that was a part of that previous approval. The application previously came before the board in April and March 2022, as well as September 21, June 21, and September 2019. At the most recent meeting, the board conditionally approved the project subject to board review of the following: the design of the elevated walkway, removal and redesign of the gate for the pedestrian mews, any additional lighting, and then redesign of the private drive with a stub to the west for a future Sullivan Avenue extension and crosswalk. In addition to the previously approved development standard modifications, the applicant is also requesting a clear vision triangle reduction for the west entrance and exit for the parking garage from 10 foot to 5 foot, which is a reduction of 5 feet. The applicant will return for approval of signage and graphics. This submittal includes site plans, floor plans, elevation, renderings, and material specifications and cut sheets. And since I'm running the tech too, we can just scroll through the material really quickly and then I'll finish reading this. Here is the site plan. I'm going to mostly focus on the conditions that we're looking at. So here is that redesign of this private drive with the stub to the west and that crosswalk. Here's the pedestrian views. We'll look at the gate condition there. These are the steps up to the amenity level. Here's that gate. I think there's a zoomed in version of it here. And this is on both sides of that muse. You can see here the steps up to the amenity area. This is also gated. And then we have the view of that elevated walkway, which was not designed yet when we looked at this previously. And then the additional lighting, really the only new fixture is this kind of bistro style, big light. It's fully shielded, directed downward, that goes through the leaves. You can see here's some more information on that gate. I believe it's the fence and gate are 8 foot tall. Here are the elevations, just to review that there have been minimal changes, some changing in window configurations, things of that sort. And then for any of the updated materials, like I believe some of like the siding material changed. The applicant has provided the material information for that. If you have any questions about those specifications, they've highlighted here on these elevations kind of where that change has taken place and then detailed what that new material is. And they did that for both buildings. Then you have the cut sheets for those products here at the end. So after reviewing all that, the proposal is generally consistent with the recommendations of the East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan. The plan recommends that a wide range of architectural styles are appropriate with a preference for contemporary building design and materials, and that buildings should include a consistent level of detailing and finish on all 4 sides. Based on the updated materials, the proposal remains consistent with these guidelines. Plan also recommends that lighting be appropriate to its location and utilized to enhance security as well as highlight distinguishing characteristics of the building. The proposal is consistent with these guidelines. And then finally, the plan recommends that development should maintain or reestablish the existing street and alley grid. With the redesign of the private drive, the proposal is now consistent with this recommendation. However, the plan also recommends that developments over 1.5 acres should include publicly accessible open space and landscaping that is aesthetically pleasing and enhances the building while creating and defining public and private space. Additionally, the plan recommends promoting visitability in all new construction. As presented, the gate and fence at the entry points for the pedestrian views are not consistent with these guidelines. Also of note, the applicant is requesting that modification to clear vision requirements. The Department of Public Service, Division of Traffic Management has reviewed the proposal and does not oppose the request. Therefore, planning is supportive of the request. Staff is supportive of the overall project, but recommends conditional approval of the application. If approved, the board would be approving the code development standard modification for the 5-foot vision clearance reduction. And as stated, staff's recommendation is conditional approval, with the condition being removal of the gates from the pedestrian views and redesigning the entry points to be more open and aesthetically pleasing per plan recommendations.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
Okay, I'll start. Actually, a lot of the board members weren't here for this application, so the issue of the fence at the courtyard and keeping that as a public thoroughfare was the big one of the big sticking points. So I can't remember, can you maybe the applicant can remind us what we sent them back tasked with to do. Staff was still not recommending that gate be put in place. And I think the board was open to creative
ways to find a situation or a solution for the gate, but I think it was maybe more closed off the last time, and this looks like it might be an improvement to what we saw.
That's what I'm trying to.
I don't believe it has changed. I can pull up the previous materials here.
That's my recollection. Maybe the applicant can clarify that. So, but I'm just.
I recall that there was discussion about the ability to lock it at night or keep it open during the day. So I think that was the applicant's preference.
Right. Yeah. So I don't know if we want to do the applicant yet, or I have another question.
Go ahead.
We, on May Street, we had also recommended that there be some graphics on May Street. I don't see that.
They are showing placeholders, or,
There's a lot of elevations here.
yes, they're showing highlighted placeholders where that art will be. They're showing a tour in the courtyard as well as along Bay.
Perhaps the applicant can direct you on that as well.
Sorry?
Perhaps the applicant.
Yeah.
I can, let me just a second.
Right. But that was, I'm not sure that was listed in the list of things that were addressed. I think that.
That,
Okay, that's
I think
fair
that was previous, that was a part, that was addressed in the previous submission, and then just carrying it over as the blocks of where it will be.
enough. Okay.
But any actual design of it, if it includes commercial copy, will come back with the graphics submission.
That's all I have.
Okay, any other questions for staff?
This, it's loading right now is the previous materials, so we go to the fence.
Great.
Question.
Yeah, go ahead.
The site triangle, parking entrance and parking garage, is that something that's come up before? Was that an issue last time? Where are we on that?
For this specific project, or,
As I read through this earlier, I couldn't tell necessarily if this was something that if there was an issue before that we pointed out, a condition.
no, this
Can't
was,
handle that.
as they moved through the design process, they realized they also needed that modification in addition to the one that was already approved, like the parking setback reduction. So we're just including that as a part of this.
But is that something that this board would approve? It sounds like that's more of a
Yeah,
technical.
you do have the authority to approve that.
Yeah, that would be,
We've never had to, we've never.
wouldn't that be like traffic?
So it's just kind of a wonky thing with the code. We as planning went back and forth with DPS on it to fully understand who has the authority to make the recommendation. I think it's a little wonky, so that's why, like, anytime someone's requesting that, I'm running it through DPS before you ever even see it. So the traffic people have looked at it, they said it's okay, so then I said it's okay, so you guys know that we both said it's okay.
Okay.
The people who have the degree to know that that's okay have said it's okay, but I'm not the one. But, so that is something that you will do, it's under the code sections for EFRB that you can modify, but, you will never be asked to modify that without knowing what traffic set up.
Right, because don't we have a certain liability if we approve something that's not safe and then something happens? Could it come back to this board?
I have no idea.
I
But
doubt that it could come back to us individually. It seems unlikely.
Okay.
But, so this happened with Gravity 3, actually, but you guys never saw it because traffic did not support it, and so they had to go back to the drawing board to fix it. So,
Question, if traffic did support it, we couldn't overrule traffic, did we? I mean, what if we decided we liked it? and traffic didn't?
Yeah,
We could be done.
I mean, you can not, grant the modification, but I think traffic probably trumps us in that regard.
Throw it back to them.
I wouldn't do it the other way around, though. I think it's the bottom line here. It doesn't make sense to do it the other way around.
It's a wonky little thing that I first encountered with Gravity 3, but it didn't actually make it this far. But since traffic is supportive, it has been bestowed upon you all to express your support or not. So this is, what's on the screen now is the gate condition that you saw last. So, the applicant can speak if any of it has changed, but the height still seems the same, and it seems to be a comparable material. And then, I can pull up the minutes from that meeting to see exactly where we landed on them. So crosswalk check, secure the stairs, so there's a gate now on the stairs. Secure the stairs, the amended deck to allow the pedestrian views to be open to the public. The views ungated would be best. Removing the gates but leaving the fencing to protect the space and service and threshold would be acceptable.
Okay, that's what I was trying to remember. Thank you.
It's been a while.
Any other questions for staff? If not, let's hear from the applicants. Gentlemen, will you state your names for records, please?
Yeah, Colby Turnock with Pasto.
Brian Bernstein with Rome Collaborative.
Gentlemen, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give be true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
I do.
All right, the floor is yours.
Real quickly, just the only thing I'm going to comment on, unless there's other questions, is the gate. We went back and talked to the management staff at phase one, where we have encountered some security issues, and we kind of wanted to take a little bit deeper dive into what those issues were. The reason why we left the gate, and I think someone alluded to it earlier, we'd like the ability to lock it at certain hours, and have it kind of as that quasi public private space in the normal daytime. I think with the management staff's concern and ours original was that this is a little bit tighter space and a little bit more confined. We do still have issues on the main public right of ways in phase one. But there was just more concern about this Muse area, from a safety perspective. So that's why we left it as is. Certainly open to, keeping it open, but we would like to lock it, at certain times.
Can I?
Go ahead, questions about open discussion.
Again, I read through the documents. Are you locking it open? Did I read that? Is there some mechanism to lock it open so that it can't? People can't just close
I think
it?
there was a J bolt at the bottom that would allow it to be remained open, but at the time that they would close it, it would be.
Right, but it's not like fixed. It's not, doesn't have a padlock on that part of it so that anybody can come up and close the gate. Is it locked open? I guess that's my question.
I guess it could be if that was the desire to have it in that condition.
So I think in the last meeting, we were suggesting that an option would be to have the fence, but have an opening and don't have a gate, right? Just so it has a sense of, this is different property or whatever, but it doesn't prevent people from walking through. So you're suggesting keep the gate, but lock it open, and so you still have that same feeling.
Well, I think our intent would be, we could have it locked open so that it felt as a public walkway, but in the event that we needed to, or at evening hours, we would like to be able to lock the Muse area closed for safety.
Right. Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant? Discussion?
Do you want to just walk through the bridge? And that was the other major element was the board members at that time wanted to see the design of the bridge. They're not here anymore. Oh, you were there. Yeah, it said in the minutes though. I was just, yeah, so I was pushing for that.
Yeah, I think, in its simplest description is two box beams basically that connect between the south building and the north parking deck to the left there. And then it's meant to look like a continuous thought in terms of the railings that are on the far left. You can see it by the amenity deck there, just simply continue around and are consistent on the elevated walkway there. So we've engineered this to remove any sort of support that comes down in the middle of the view to keep that open and visible. And it's fairly simple in its execution in terms of sort of a minimalist design. So.
I think the bridge looks good.
Excuse
I
me?
like the bridge a lot.
I said, I think the bridge looks good.
Me too.
Is there any lighting under the bridge? I don't see any.
There's not anything specified at the moment. The lighting is coming from the adjacent catenary lighting that's there.
Just to be at night, something nice to light up light or something so that, oh no, not to do up lights, but like to put some lighting on it so it kind of like.
There's some lighting up under it, and
Yeah.
then fully shielded and directed downward.
Exactly. That's what I meant to say.
I have a comment about the gate. Can you go back to that?
Yeah.
I have a friend who lives in Shortory, you know where that is, in Short North.
Yep.
And it's a similar environment. I know Michael's been there. There's an interior kind of courtyard. You might be familiar with it. It's a lovely place. There's very few people ever in it. We were just there for Confest, right? So walking through the back way, and it's nice. It's really beautiful. And it has a gate. It's decorative. It's out on High Street or to Park Street at the park. And, frankly, this gate it kind of looks like prison bars to me. It's just an 8-foot high fence of bars. I think, and this is just a comment for everybody, to give some perspective, that the treatment of the gate at Victorian Gate, if you think about the way it looks as you approach it, it's inviting. To me, that looks a little bit like prison bars. That's all.
Well,
And one quick question, sorry. for Stephanie, sorry, I don't know this, is there a maximum height on a fence? 8 feet high, that's a little scary. I understand security, right? It
Yeah.
looks like security.
I don't think that there's anything like specific in the plan language that would be applicable here. A lot of things would say like 6 foot board on, it would specify like, you know, between uses, 6 foot board on board or something like that. But it doesn't say like a maximum of 6 feet, but, from our perspective, 8 feet, we feel is too high. Normally, we would not see things go above 6 feet.
And Stephanie, I actually believe we've had a case where it was an 8-foot fence and we actually.
Yes, we did.
Right.
Mr. Reiner's post office, he wanted to throw an
Oh.
8-foot stockade fence.
Right, but there was another one that was like an art gallery or something. It was a house with an art gallery in it and they had an 8-foot fence around it. It was just, it looked like a, you know, barricade in addition to the wooden barricade.
Yeah.
And so I thought there was a code restriction to not over a certain height.
Not that I saw, in this review, but I mean, I think the general rule of thumb, like, is when we're doing reviews here or elsewhere in the city is like 6 foot is the height.
The board could have said it looks too high, you need to lower it, right? Yeah.
We generally have some control over the general design of the fence for general improvement. So aesthetically. Right, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the plan guidance that I was referring to says that, you know, promote accessibility and visitability, and then, let's see, landscaping materials and design, which we would consider like this type of fencing, should enhance structures, create and define public and private space, provide shade, aesthetic appeal, and environmental benefits. So to me, that follows the design of this entry point.
And to that point, from a pedestrian perspective, this doesn't look like a place I'm allowed to go in, even when the gate's open.
Yeah.
So, you know, the height of the fence, and then also, I mean, I don't know a whole lot about particular fence design, but even if it was a sliding fence that would open both sides to a wider breadth that would allow, you know what I'm saying, during the day, I totally get the locking it at night and the safety issues, but this doesn't look like a place that's supposed to be public for me anyway.
I think that's the general tone we had the first time, like, it would, like you're saying, like a sliding fence, that kind of.
Yeah, something that would give me a,
Like a
If that-
40-inch fence almost.
if it opened up twice as wide as what that opening looks, and it's more like the fence looks more like just a decorative fencing that's coming up to the edge of the sidewalk instead of, you know, a gate at a, you know,
And I gather shorter too.
yeah.
Yeah, I wish I could share this photo with everybody, but I got a picture of what they do at Victorian Gate. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's nicer. I like the way it looks, and there are plants and things around it.
So,
Yeah, I found it on Google Earth.
so I guess I'd ask the applicant, you know, you heard all our feedback at the last meeting. This doesn't look dramatically different in where your previous approach, other than showing the gate open as opposed to closed. I don't think anybody, I can't remember anybody really talking about the design of the fence at that point. We were more about whether it was open or closed, but, you know, it is a great opportunity to do something more than the steel picket fence, to do some decorative. I get exactly where Francis Joe's going with, kind of like if you had a decorative fence, you call it whatever fence or whatever you call it, with like double gates that opened up, so the opening was bigger, and at night, I think we're all sympathetic to being able to lock it down at night. So, you know, so.
And I gather we're sympathetic to the general idea of security at night. Yeah, okay.
I'm sorry, that's not even the side I was talking.
No,
The park that goes down to
side.
Park Street, now that's better, I mean, than the Park Street side. But yeah, the other end,
Yeah, so like where that Victorian Gate way is,
Yeah.
right around there.
you got it. That, I think would serve the same purpose of keeping
But
people
as you see-
finding it.
But as Francis said, if you open it up, it's gonna spread out to look more inviting.
What does it look like a fence then? If it's opened up, it's easy.
Right, then you've got those brick pillars on either side that are really kind of masking the fact that there's even a gate there at all.
Yeah.
In this instance, anyway.
Yeah, it's a great space. And this is what you're proposing, great space also, is the better in gateway feature. I think.
Yeah, Chris.
The applicant, you started off by saying you wanted to dive into some more detail about the security concerns. Do you want to share some of the details behind what you've experienced in phase one?
Yeah, it does, most of our issues are kind of in the tighter spaces that aren't as open to the public right away. Is where we see the vast majority of issue in phase one. So that's what was kind of driving this, security desire from our management team.
Are we talking about break-ins or like
Break-ins,
assaults? Or?
no assaults, mainly break-ins, some vandalism, but those are probably the two biggest.
So this, this is essentially Cherry Street, right? So there is a corridor that exists now that this space is an extension of, right? So it does have that sense of reinforcing the block grid of Franklinton, right?
And the staff recommendation is in part because of the size of the project. Being over like 1.5 acres, having some publicly accessible open space and just folks not generally having to like walk around the entire block to get.
To the other side.
And I appreciate the example, Jim, of Victorian Gate, because I think that's something that we could achieve. I think, our probably initial design intent with these buildings being a little bit more modern in their design, it's like where Victorian Gate's a much more traditional building. It probably wasn't something that was on our radar, but I think we could probably accomplish something like that.
I think it's the width of the opening. There's not enough width to make it look like it's inviting, but if it.
Well, the height of the fence too.
And the height of the fence, yeah, we can do that. I think the fence could be lower and then you have like a double wide opening and, that would help. And I don't know, obviously, putting in the brick pillars and stuff would not be consistent in your. Sure.
But to Francis's point, having that sidewalk space being accessible, like to see it all the way through, that looks like that would be more inviting. If someone who walks a lot in that neighborhood, it would be nice not to have to walk all the way around. So yeah.
Yeah, without that penetration, it's a good idea. It would feel like a compound. A defensible space. It would look like a defensible space. I know the idea is to have a defensible space, and there's nothing wrong. That's when they look like they're afraid of the outside world, which becomes unfortunate.
All right, let's discuss this for a moment. So I gather there's a consensus here to have the applicant return with a new fence design that is shorter, more inviting, wider opening. Anybody disagree with that assessment?
Would the board be amenable to that being a staff approvable condition? I've gathered that you're looking for shorter. If we could specify height, that would be easy for us to staff approve. A wider opening, and then still being able to be able, it would still have gates, be able to be locked at night, whether they go this way or they swing. And then I've got Victorian Gate-esque, not necessarily that exact style with the brick, but something a little more ornate than just the.
Do we want that to be staff approved, or do we want to pass on the aesthetics in particular?
I think it'd be okay to staff approve.
I agree.
And what they're doing is basically an element that's consistent throughout the project with the railings up above and all that. And
Okay.
it's consistent other than the height. So I don't have a problem with consistency. It is, to me, it is a missed opportunity to create some kind of like an art gate, with whatever, but that's not here or there. But I think, again, maybe it's double gates that are wide enough that when you open them, it really feels a little bit more inviting than just the single gate.
And I would also say, Kim, I like your idea of it being actually locked open,
Yeah.
because I'm also cognizant of walking into a space in which someone could lock me in,
Yeah.
right?
Mm.
So,
It's actually dangerous.
right,
Uh,
right. So if by same virtue on a safety factor, being able to lock it at night, but also having it be able to be locked open during the day.
All right, do we have any other issues with the application beyond the gate?
Can you specify the preferred height?
The maximum 6 feet?
Isn't 6 feet in some part of the code already there? Was it the wood?
I mean, you will see 6 feet frequently when it's referring to like privacy fence,
Yeah, I think let's keep that as a consistent.
max of 6 feet.
Yeah.
I think, Kim, you had questions about the art on Cherry?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
scroll that.
Not on Cherry, on May.
Oh, May, yeah. I just remember the art part.
Well, it's just because it's a blank.
Yeah, there's like ones that we talked about.
Oh, so that was the reference to it, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is the part in the muse that will have the,
I missed the note that goes with the yellow. It's not yellow brick.
it's the yellow brick.
And could you just explain the your shed thing?
The vision clearance.
Vision, yeah,
thing?
whatever that is.
Yes.
I know what it is, but.
Sure. I'll go back to this. Explain this to the best of my understanding. So it's basically this entrance here. There's a code required vision triangle that basically would like go from the right of way like back.
Yep.
And on either side of that entrance and exit, and it's basically clear vision triangle, so someone should be able to, like, somebody in a car should be able to see, and people from the sidewalk should be able to see the cars coming out. And the requirement is 10 feet. So you'll often see what, like, in these, you know, very urban environments, when the buildings are right on the, like, the property line, you'll see like an encroachment on that vision clearance, and that's where you see people requesting to reduce it. I've seen people request to reduce it completely to 0. This is in half, and our smart engineer friends were good with it, so.
And this is on May Avenue, which is not a major,
Yes, it's not on both sides, it's just on this.
that's the only place with it.
Just this May Avenue one, the McDowell one is set back far enough that.
What is the other comment that says drawer E contents that's up on the intersection with McDowell? The note that's up on McDowell. and-
Drawer E,
If there's another one that's up on McDowell. And what's that mean?
I have no idea, that would be wonderful.
That's the extent of what we've submitted with the Drury to adjust crosswalks.
So
So,
there's no issues with that.
no, that's just giving you the scope of what our Drury
Ah,
process is incorporating.
Okay, that's good, thank you.
Great question, because I have no idea what that means.
Right, that's,
It's adding crosswalks that don't exist today because the Drury process is requiring that. So I think we were just we were sharing with you the comprehensive pedestrian circulation because other crosswalks have been requested by this body on the south. And so I think we're just be holistic in its pedestrian connectivity.
yep.
All right. Motion. Everybody's looking at me again. I think we need you, Bill. So, I move that, the application be approved, subject to the condition that the applicant, return, for approval of the, gate modification.
Bill, did you say staff approval?
It's
Yes,
staff
approval. We'll get there.
Sorry.
We'll get there. You think I would put in the specific elements that we're requiring?
Sure, yeah,
We'll give it a try. All right.
I'll read it back to you, and then we can make sure we go.
So, maximum, the gate will have a maximum height of 6 feet, be double wide open to pedestrian access, be able to be locked in the open position.
It will be can we try this one? Twice as wide as it is. now.
Twice as wide as what was presented to the board today.
Yes,
Okay.
The opening will be.
so it's basically 2 gates that are.
Yeah. Okay. Am I missing anything? Aesthetics to be approved by be subject to aesthetics and all other elements to be subject to staff approval.
Okay. So what I,
Mouthful, go
yeah,
ahead.
so I've got a motion for a staff approvable condition. Motion to approve with a staff approvable condition that the fence be reduced in height to a maximum of 6 feet. That's fence and gate, whole thing, no higher than 6 feet. That the opening be redesigned to be twice as wide as it is shown, whatever that measurement is, double wide. And then to be able to be locked in the open position. And then that would be, you know, the design of all of this together is staff approval. But
Everybody agree with that?
one
It's
thing,
my motion, I stand by it.
one thing to note about the being locked in the open position, they can note that with like the bolt or whatever it is on the drawings, but just know that that is somewhat operational, so
There's no guarantee
Yeah.
that they're gonna do it, but
Yeah.
I think the intent is there.
yeah, but it can be shown on the drawings that, you know, with the bolt, that there's a locking mechanism. So we need a second then.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Way. Stephanie, call roll, please.
Mr. Fergus,
Approve.
Mr. Way,
Approved.
Mr. Bush,
Approved.
Mr. Nobby,
Approved.
Ms. Benner,
Approved.
Mr. Sweeney,
Approved.
and Ms. Hamilton. Motion carries.
Okay. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Our next application is EF 2306-003. The address is 245 South Skidmore Street. The owner is Jeff Mormon Finance Fund, and the applicant is Carrick Sherrill, Columbus Design LLC. Staff report, please.
Sure thing. As a reminder, so you've seen both of these projects before, they've been conditionally approved. The applicant submits them as one package because I believe that's the way that they're working through their process, but we do have two separate staff reports, two separate motions. I'm going to be presenting the one on Skidmore and then I'm going to turn it over to Nolan to present the one on Sullivan. So EF 2306-003 for 245 South Skidmore Street. The applicant is requesting final review and action for a 9-unit townhome development and surface parking lot within the Dodge Park subdistrict. The applicant received conditional approval at the June 2022 meeting. As a reminder, the project includes 9 for-sale townhome units. That's between 2 buildings. One building has 5 units, one has 4 units. There's a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom units with 1 ADA unit. The units feature front porches, energy efficient fixtures and appliances, and then functional and durable materials. The surface parking lot is to be shared between both buildings. This site, you will recall, has the site constraint with the floodplain along Rich Street, so we'll talk about that. This included a lot combination of 6 parcels. The price point for the units is to be determined, but they are planning to use the to have them be affordable based on the land trust model. The proposed parking setback for the west property line is 0 foot. That's a modification that was previously approved. And then the proposed front yard setback from the north property line is 57.5 feet. The code establishes a 10-foot maximum, but the front yard modification was previously approved, and that's because of this floodplain situation on this parcel. So the applicant is requesting, the applicant's also requesting a code development standard modification for interior landscaping to allow for the required shade trees to be located outside of the parking lot as shown on the drawings. The application previously came before the board at the June 22 and April 22 meetings. At the most recent meeting, the board conditionally approved the project subject to the conditions that the applicant returned for approval of lighting and landscaping, adding 2 windows to the Rich Street building's east elevation, adding sidewalks from the units to the public sidewalk for the Skidmore building, and then accessible parking. There was a little wonky thing happening with the drawings last time, so relocating the parking off of the sidewalk. And then the applicant will return if there's any applicable like signage or graphics for this project. So I'll go through the materials quickly. This is what no one's doing. Okay. So here is the site plan. You can see the accessible parking space here. This has changed. This is kind of all one paved area now, and then this is striped for the ADA space. You'll see the walkways from the individual units here going to the sidewalk, which was a condition. You're seeing the landscaping. And then you also have the lighting detail. The only landscaping information that we do not have right now is for this front parcel, which is something we should discuss. Based on the last meeting, I think there was a general consensus that this needs to be like an enhanced kind of heavy landscape treatment area. The applicant can speak to it, but it is their intent to engage with an OSU landscape architecture class, but that can't happen until the fall. But they're looking to move forward with this without that piece of the project having been approved on good faith that they will return with a proposal for that piece. So that's the site plan. Here is the lighting plan and the landscaping plan for the parking lot. So these are where light fixtures will be. Everything's fully shielded and directed downward, so that's all good. You'll see the request to not have shade trees in the parking lot. I think the code says that like any parking over 10 spaces needs to have shade trees in it, but in this type of configuration, you can't put a tree in the parking lot, so they're both over here. This is the so these are this is the ones, the Ridge Street building. So it was these two windows that you all had requested be added because this is the east elevation that not only fronts Rich, but it also fronts Skidmore. So we had them add 2 windows here, similar condition on the one Nolan will be presenting. They did that there as well. This is the lighting plan for the buildings. It's just essentially going to be can lights up under the courtrooms. So that's all consistent. Which one is it? I think we're creeping into the orange territory. Oh, so similar. Scroll down. And then here are the materials. A lot of this was included last time. You can see they have that light pole fixture that's going to be like in the parking lot, and here's that can light fixture. They did so kindly include photos of the trees. Those of us who are not landscape architects that may not know what those materials are, so we have those here. And that's it. So in review of all of that, the proposal is generally consistent with the recommendations of the plan. Plan recommends that buildings front the street and have direct access to public sidewalks. Plan also recommends that lighting be appropriate to its location and fully shielded and directed downward. And the plan recommends the inclusion of street trees in consultation with the city forester. The updated project as presented is consistent with these guidelines. The plan also recommends that landscaping materials and design enhance structures, create and define public-private spaces, provide shade, aesthetic appeal, and environmental benefits. The landscaping as shown on the plans is consistent with this recommendation. However, information on how the Ridge Street parcel will be landscaped is not yet available. As noted in the previous submission, the proposed setback from Ridge Street is supportable due to the extenuating circumstances caused by the floodplain. Staff continues to recommend enhanced landscaping for this space and notes that the applicant's intent to engage landscape architecture students on the project this fall. Due to the unique situation on this parcel, staff would support approving the proposal without this portion of the project being completed, given a commitment from the applicant to return to the EFRB for review and final approval of any landscaping on this parcel. Staff is supportive of the proposal and recommends approval. If approved, the board would be approving the following code development standard modification, which is the interior landscaping to allow the shade trees to be outside of the parking lot as shown on the drawings. Staff recommends approval without condition.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
So, so this is a final approval, right? And the landscape plan does not have specific plant material, it just says generalized plant material. I don't remember us approving a plan at this stage that doesn't have a specific plant material list.
This is not a specific plant material list, like what I'm showing on the screen.
No, there would be, specific plant material, not just generalized shrubs, evergreen. like it would be spirea or it would be boxwood or, not just, evergreen shrub.
Okay.
So I'm a little worried about setting a precedent that this would be acceptable at this stage of a submittal. So flowering tree, is it a dogwood? Is it a crab apple? Is it a?
Says,
And I-
yeah, I mean, it says et cetera, but they did list like serviceberry, dogwood, redbud as potential.
But again, usually, I'm just saying, the way, what we've approved in the past has been, each plan will be, a real planting plan, that you mark every plant, what specifically it is. Anybody back me up with that? I'm just saying, that's what we've approved in the past as a planting plan. This to me is still a conceptual plan, because it's not specific in terms of each specific plan. That's a question too.
That's a question. I mean, we felt that this was detailed enough. However, you specifically are the landscape architect, so if you think that this leaves a lot, I don't know, I would not be able to tell you the difference between a honey locust tree and another tree. So,
Yes, you would. No, I'm thinking in precedent here, right? That we're approving a final plan, and this is not a final landscape plan by industry standards.
Well, in that vein, Kim, I'll back you up a little bit on this because, tree selection is super important when it comes to upheaval of, the ground around it, the concrete and sidewalks.
Right.
What kinds of droppings are they going to leave, the size of the leaves and things like that. A honey locust tree has leaves about the size of my pinky that just blow away, but a nice maple tree may look beautiful, but it's gonna coat the ground with a lot of debris in the fall, and then what does that do for? So I'm kind of with you on the being more specific, especially when it comes to trees, because we don't want them to have to tear out trees in 5 years because it was the wrong.
And this is a floodplain. There is a floodplain here, right? So you could assume that there's wet soils. So you want plant material that do well in wet soils, trees and everything else. So
Question procedural wise, would it be possible to approve the application subject to staff approval of landscape plans or detailed landscape plans, including specific plants? And I imagine you could do that in consultation with the city forester.
I was gonna say, you don't want me to do that because I just don't.
Consultation with the city forester.
well, we would typically review the landscape plan.
Yeah.
Submit it. But
You all. I mean, when we receive a landscape plan, we want to make sure that the different materials are shown, that they're showing street trees. When I say material shown, I mean like what we're seeing here, where it's like, there's gonna be a bush here and a tree here, and, the parking lot's gonna be screened. So those are the level of detail that we are evaluating. And then for something like street trees, sure, they need to check in with the city forester on that. But besides that, it really gets like volleyed over to you all to say, like, this burning bush will look great for a while, but then it's gonna be dead, or that level of detail.
yeah, so I guess that falls on me, right?
I don't think you want me to staff approve the landscape plan. I mean, in theory, like the forester could say these are appropriate, but I don't know that that's the level of.
So when we've gotten submittals in the past, I actually have looked at all of the plants and, generally do they kind of fit in the character of the site, and are they going to be the right types of plant material for, the specific area, whether it's a street tree or it's a plant, a foundation planting or whatever, yeah. So I can't do that on this, so I can't.
Is the concern that they provided options, or is the concern that the options, like some of them might be appropriate, but others might not be?
Okay, my professional opinion, based on industry standards, is this is not a planting plan. It's a planting concept. So a planting plan would have specific plant material, species and, genus and species identified, there'd be a plant table, you know, just like an architectural table of hardware or whatever. So that's what's typically submitted to us. We get that on all of them. This is the first submission. That's why I'm flagging it going, oh, it's a conceptual landscape plan, but it's not a final development plan.
So follow-up question then. Let's say that we give the applicant a very specific approval for certain trees, shrubs, et cetera. A year passes and for whatever reason, we won't say it's nefarious, but for whatever reason, those are removed and something else is put in their place. Would we have any control over that whatsoever?
Well, and that's where I'm wondering, you know, is this a space in which, I mean, I would hope that the person who is developing this would do their due diligence, right, on getting trees that you're not gonna have to replace in 5 years, right? So where does our responsibility on this board lie? I appreciate that Kim is actually doing that and going through and saying, hey, you know, these feel really appropriate and great for this site, but is that the level of oversight that we're supposed to be? That's my ignorance.
So if you,
Sorry.
I was gonna say, so it really like we have the benefit of having a landscape architect on the board. But if you look at the, like the checklist that's included, the items about landscaping are really like what's in the board's purview. And some of that is quite big. So, you know, you can interpret that to look at it more closely. But like, the same language that was applicable to the last one, like landscaping materials and design should enhance structures, create and define public and private spaces, provide shade, aesthetic appeal, and environmental benefits. Paved areas should be shaded. Street trees are recommended. Landscaping on private property bordering sidewalks should be designed with new elements. Street trees should meet the following minimum, you know, caliber size, which we checked, and those do check out. But it's like that level of detailing is what is in the plan, which is what the board is reviewing for. So.
And I feel like for me, this is probably specific enough, but I don't wanna
So let me
take
ask,
my.
yeah, let me ask.
We want to swear in the app. I can tell you want to say something really get a dialogue
Sir,
going
will you
here.
state your name for the record, please?
Michael McLaughlin with the Columbus Design Company.
And do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be true and accurate to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Of course.
Okay, so we now have the applicant sworn in. We can have a discussion here.
All I really wanted to point out was on the page that she has on the screen, at the end of the name of each line, like where it says deciduous flowering shrub DS, those are tagged on the site plans.
No, I get that, but then you look at the plant schedule and it just says DS flowering shrubs. And it should say,
On the last page, like it'll say summer snowflake viburnum. Emerald green arborvitae.
can you scroll to
Well, don't tell me we're gonna have this discussion for 15 minutes.
I believe that's the intent. These are the specific plants that are intended where the legend does read more generically, admittedly.
Okay, again, the documents are mix and match, so maybe I'm confused. I was also seeing up top, it was saying, or approve, or equal, right? Which is not unusual to have that, but, okay. So I guess it comes down to, you know, what documents, we're approving all these documents, so we have to take the whole. Was there a landscape architect that was actually involved in putting these together? This was done by
Us,
an architect.
architects.
Yeah,
Yes.
so. I have a question, like other ethical things.
No offense.
Architects are supposed to be
Not
doing landscape.
literally not saying it.
I have a registered landscape architect in the state of Ohio, like, architects should not be doing landscape plans. Legally. Anyway,
That's his problem with the relevant regulatory authorities.
yes, I see it. Yeah. Yeah, again, it's not your conventional way of putting together a planting plan. So that's why I'm confused by it, because it's pictures and says, oh yeah, that's a picture of a red maple, but, and you put the ST next to it, right? Which is shade tree. It should say red maple RM would be the proper way to designate those trees, and they should be labeled then on the plan where each of all the red maples are. So it just, I guess I'm having trouble with the submittal.
It's,
I think you're,
do the letters that you used, whatever they may be, do they match up to specific items, in the submittals?
only as a generic thing, as a deciduous tree, or as opposed to a red maple. See, that's what I'm having trouble with.
So like here, on the actual drawing, it says FT,
Which is flowering tree.
right, which up here says flowering tree, serviceberry, dogwood, redbud,
Okay.
etc. But then back here, it says, there's flowering tree. I think the one that's on.
Yeah, I did note there are two that aren't on there, but yeah, like shade tree ST on the plan. The intent would be for the October Glory red maple.
So I would be okay if somebody went back through this and changed, I mean, if you pick the plant material, then designate them as that plant material, not as a generic thing on the plan, then that would be then a planting plan.
Argue,
And staff could approve that.
if, in the event that,
Along with these plants.
okay. That's what I wanted to make sure. I don't want to be determining if plant material is appropriate or not. But if you basically just want to see these be consistent, where it says ST, you want it to actually say red maple or an abbreviated.
Yeah,
often,
Yeah.
um,
In fact, in that chart where you have deciduous tree, you could then list the ones you want to use and then show on the plan where they are. So I think it's just a matter of preparing the correct document for submittal. I don't have a problem with the plant material that you suggested, if they're all included. But I think it needs to, if we're approving a planting plan, it needs to be a planting plan with specific species on that plan. And again, that's the way all submittals come to us. Usually there's a landscape architect involved. They put together a proper submittal, and that's what we're approving. This is out of the norm. So I want to be consistent.
Thoughts, anybody?
I think we're kind of in like, the size of the project is a gray area, because if you think about a single family home, you know, that those homeowners are hiring a landscape architect to do a special plan, but there's only one tree, so they can write it themselves. This is 9-unit townhome. It's not a 300-unit river and bridge or gravity, and so I don't want the board to be overly burdensome, but at the same time, I understand what you're saying. I think that the submittal here is detailed enough for my comfort level. I can also tell you, I know 2 developments in Franklinton where the landscape was stolen after it was installed. So like, and then it never was replaced. So it's,
We could,
You know,
catalogs.
we gotta be, I just think it's a slippery slope when we get a little too detail oriented, but I do really, I learned a lot from you, Kim, and I really appreciate your perspective on it. So it's not unappreciated at all. But I would be comfortable with this. I would say maybe staff could approve them adding the 2 missing examples that they need to link here, so that we just have all bases covered. That's my opinion, but.
Anyone else?
I'm in agreement with Chris there. And that seems to feel, yeah.
So the alternatives are what now? In one alternative, we would ask the applicant to return for staff approval of of a landscape plan that specifies what?
Specific plant material.
Specific
In
plant material.
specific
in specific places.
Mhm.
Okay, the other alternative is we're not gonna do that. Right? Those are the alternatives we have right now.
Quick question, just for clarification. Staff approval is done exactly how? That means,
Staff approval is, the applicant goes forth and makes any changes and then submits to me the drawings and I say, oh, yep, you lowered the fence height to 6 feet, check. And then they can move forward without having to come back to the board.
So in other words, in this case, staff approval would simply be, yeah, they named a specific splash area for each place, check, right? Whatever it may be, and you would not be passing judgment on what it was. Just
Correct,
it was
that
there.
it would match what was stated.
Match the materials that they presented. Yeah.
In the category that so deciduous tree, evergreen tree, flower tree, those are categories are fine, and then they just still list under it what of these fall into those categories, and then where they are on the plan.
It sounds as if Kim's concerns can be easily addressed by the applicant, knowing what you know now, the applicant knows now, just simply by providing that information to Stephanie through a staff approval process.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
So I would be agreeable to condition on staff approval of the changes that Kim describes.
And again, I'm trying to be like fair to every other applicant, that everybody submits the same thing. And I would label it that they need to submit a proper planting plan, which is what we just described, right? It's the circle plan, right, with blue initials on it that specify the specific, whether it's a red maple or a sugar maple or whatever, but it's specific to that circle in that area of the site. So the work's already almost done. You just have to change the limit, just correct the labels.
And assuming there's no opposition from the board, I could always confirm with Mr. Way upon receipt that this is a proper landscape plan. If there's any question in my mind.
Confirm with me. I'm going to ask you what Kim said, so.
Well, again, I'm going to represent the American Society of Landscape Architects. It's like somebody coming in and submitting building plans that haven't been done by an architect, right, and aren't sealed by an architect. That's actually against, and would we approve plans that weren't, something that wasn't?
Or that didn't have a specific window called out,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're in that, and I feel like just for precedent's sake, I'm with you, Chris, or I feel like we're kind of in a semantical argument right now. But at the same time, for precedent's sake, that if it were a much bigger project and it was not specified with then we can't really say.
I will add that whatever this board decides, and I'm, like being chair, I almost have to be agnostic about it. It sounds like it's not going to be terribly burdensome on the applicant one way or the other, as the applicant agrees. So one big motion.
I would,
Precedents, policies.
I do want to make, I guess I want to put this to the board also, is that I would like us to have an expectation that every submittal, if there's a landscape element to it, that the submittal be have the involvement of a registered landscape architect in it, so that it's following all the proper guidelines and somebody that knows plant material and how it grows and all that stuff. And that's how we're gonna.
I think to Mr. Knoppy's point, I don't know how we can enforce that. It might get a little messy, especially based on the scale of projects. I mean, I don't think we can require that someone have a landscape architect on their.
And the city doesn't require it. It just, I'm not even beyond the board.
Yeah.
To submit a development project, you don't need to have a landscape plan done by a licensed landscape architect.
Sure.
I mean, the guys from Realm are licensed landscape architects.
It's not
Back to the requiring of everybody includes requiring of someone who comes in here who owns a single family residence and submits a landscape plan. And it seems burdensome for them to have to hire a landscape architect to do their landscape plan.
And we also want to be cautious of setting a precedent in requiring this, like say someone comes in with something like this and going down the path of always saying, that's okay as long as you change it to a proper landscaping plan and that's staff approvable, because then that's going to have it be, we don't want everyone coming in with like something conceptual and saying, this is my landscape plan, and then that falling on staff and then having to defer to Kim all the time on those types of matters. So that's, if there's justification for like this specific circumstance, but I would just be cautious in setting a precedent for that. And if that means you all think that this isn't ready and they need to come back with a proper landscaping plan, or if the board thinks that this is enough, but I would just be cautious of setting.
The board sees this as staff approvable, and I'm reading the room correctly. Board sees this as being staff approvable based upon simply the detail that Ken, I'm sure, is going to outline in his pending motion for approval. No pressure.
We just don't want it to happen every time, like if someone doesn't say
Right.
enough, that it's going to.
But I've been on this board for, I don't know how long, this is the first time I've seen
Yeah.
us at this point.
Right.
So it's not this is not typical.
And this is really close.
Yeah, oh yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
we're like this far away,
Yeah.
But it's just not,
but I hear you. Steph.
it's not consistent in the documents, right? And it's, yeah.
Just lighting and landscaping is often something that holds up the projects. You know, folks will come in and get their design and everything, and then they get a condition, and they come back for lighting and landscaping, and we don't want to make it so people think they can
Skirt that.
like just do the minimum for landscaping because they know they're gonna get it to a place of staff approval, so they have some more time to work on it and can keep moving along. That's what we want to avoid.
Okay, the plan is fine. I don't have any problem with the plan. I just want it all documented correctly or specified correctly. I wouldn't change the plan. And the material's fine. It's just getting it all, pulled together.
I mean, I think if what is shown, despite whether it's documented correctly or not, is consistent with the plan recommendations, then I think that there's a case to be made for just approving it. If there's something about the way that this is presented that's not consistent with the plan recommendations, then I think it's okay to have him revise it, but I just think it gets a little muddy with, to the point of scale of projects and single family versus people who just have landscape architects. And I mean, certainly we don't want to be stamping something that's bad or illegal, or if there's something dramatically wrong with this one. But I mean, if it's close and it satisfies the plan conditions or the plan recommendations.
Well, I would make a motion that the plan be revised to incorporate specific plant material in each of the circles by genus and species. According to the plants that have been illustrated. So approving kind of that illustration, but creating a revised plan that reflects specific plants.
And
That's my motion.
Well, you got a motion. Again, it's a motion to approve something to that condition.
Yes.
So maybe to make it more cut and dry for staff, we can say that plan would mirror what's defined on page A43 with the addition of, maybe you could suggest what to use for the two things that are missing.
I would leave it up to staff to get them. I don't want to start getting specific because I then would want to stop and go back through the documents and check everything. Then I think let staff they know where I guess my interest is, I think. And Stephanie said she would come back and ask my opinion, which I'm happy to give.
Not shy about that.
so thinking about this project and other projects, essentially what you're saying is that what they're proposing is fine. You're just looking for it to be labeled differently on the final set of drawings, right? Which is something that anyone could do. If I own a single family house and I'm proposing one tree, when I show a circle on my site plan, you want to know what the circle is.
Exactly. I don't want it to be shade tree, right? Because they could put in some crazy tree that's never going to
Return with specificity.
Yes.
So
Genus and species. That's of each circle.
let me write that down.
So red maple is Acer rubra.
Yeah, I'm not writing that down. Let the record reflect. Okay. So I'm hearing that you are looking for a motion for a conditional approval. That condition means staff approvable, but the condition is that it would revise the drawings to show the genus and species of the plant material that is reflected on this final page on the actual drawings. Got it?
Yes,
Okay.
that's included in the approval set.
Okay. Motion has been made. Do I have a second?
And I just make a point of clarification real quick. And we also need those two missing items included, right? The flowering tree and whatever the other
Yeah,
one.
I just assume that will get corrected too,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Go on.
Jimmy second,
Yeah, that motion still stands, yes?
motion still stands.
Then I said,
Been moved and seconded to approve with the stated condition that I will not restate. And Stephanie Caldwell,
Sure thing. Mr. Fergus,
approve.
Mr. Way,
Approve.
Mr. Bush,
Approve.
Mr. Nobby,
Approve.
Ms. Benner,
Approve,
Mr. Sweeney,
approve.
and Ms. Hamilton.
approve.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Now, no one gets to go through this again.
Basically the exact same thing.
It's
Approve.
quite simple.
Yes, you do.
Thank you. All right, for the proposed work description, this is EM 23-06-003,
Is,
638 Sullivan Avenue. And the applicant is requesting final review and action for a new 10-unit townhome development and surface parking lot within the Dodge Park subdistrict. The applicant received conditional approval at the June 2022 meeting. As a reminder, the project includes 10 for sale townhomes, 2 buildings, both containing 5 units, and contain a mix of 2 and 3 bedrooms with 1 ADA unit. Units feature front porches, energy efficient fixtures and appliances, and functional and durable materials, excuse me. Surface parking lot to be shared between both buildings, lot combination of 2 parcels, total. Price point to be determined, but affordable using the land trust model. Proposed parking setback for the west property line is 0 feet and the code establishes a 5-foot minimum. Parking setback modification is requested and that standard was previously approved. The application previously came before the board at the April and June 2022 meetings. At the June 2022 meeting, the board conditionally approved the project subject to the conditions that the applicant will return for: approval of lighting and landscaping, addition of 2 windows to the Sullivan Avenue building's east elevation. I think Stephanie pointed that out on the site or the elevations. Addition of sidewalks from the units to the public sidewalk for the Sullivan Avenue building. It will return for approval of any graphics and signage if applicable. The submittal will include the site plan, floor plans, elevations, and material specifications. Proposal is generally consistent with the recommendations of the East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan. The plan recommends that buildings front the street and have direct access to public sidewalks, the lighting be appropriate to its location and fully shielded, directed downward. And the street trees should be included in new development projects in consultation with the city forester. Updated project as presented is in line with these guidelines. The East Franklinton Creative Community District Plan also recommends that landscaping materials and design should enhance structures, create and define public-private spaces, provide shade, aesthetic appeal, and environmental benefits. Staff notes the 1 shade tree near the parking lot. Staff encourages the applicant to consider an additional shade tree near the parking lot, but does not condition support on this request. Staff is supportive of the proposal, recommends approval.
Okay,
So for the materials, this one had the condition of lighting and landscaping. It's the same lighting and landscaping that was proposed for the other one. You can see it here on the site plan, and then the more detailed site plans show the circles with the ST and things in them. Same thing here with the building, the frontage that's at the corner of Sullivan Grove. We asked for 2 additional windows. They are showing that on the drawings. And then sidewalks from the units here on Sullivan out to the public sidewalks. So from staff's perspective, the conditions have been addressed.
questions for staff? Applicant's already sworn in. Questions for applicant? This is essentially identical to the previous application. I gather that the board would be amenable to repeating the same approval from application EF 2306-004. And if you want to read that, Mr. Way will adopt that as his motion.
That was the conditional approval with the condition being staff approval that the lost it, that the applicant is to revise the drawings to show the genus and species of the plant material reflected on the last page on the site plan drawings, and then the missing items, the 2 missing items should be added.
Motion so made.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Bush seconds. Call roll, please.
Mr. Fergus,
Approved.
Mr. Way,
Approved.
Mr. Bush,
Approved.
Mr. Noffe,
Approved.
Ms. Benner,
Approved.
Mr. Sweeney,
Approved.
Ms. Hamilton. Motion carries.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Well, I know.
All right. Stephanie, I have a conceptual application here, but I don't see anyone in the here to talk about it.
Yes, that appears to be the case. So we can talk about it if you want. I don't think there's anything that says that they have to be here. It's best practice that they be here, or we can continue it since they're not here.
I don't know why we would talk about it, because we're trying to give them guidance. There's nobody here to guide.
Yeah, I mean, it would just be a reaction to what you're seeing them proposing, whether, like, this is just.
So
like-
everybody wants to go through it, let's go through it.
It's up to you all. It's just a matter of, I mean, this issue becomes more problematic for like a German village who gets 26 cases a month. And then when you have applicants that don't show up, it rolls over and rolls over, and then you have 40 cases one month.
Right, it's not been a
I
problem.
don't foresee that being an issue here. So if you all like to move on to other business and just, well, we need a motion to continue this. But
So moved. We have a second.
second,
Motions to move on to other business.
Yeah.
to continue this
Continue
application.
the application. Okay, it's been moved and seconded to continue.
Who's our second?
Francis,
All right, Mr. Burgess,
approve.
Mr. Wick,
Approved.
Mr. Bush,
Approved.
Mr. Noffe,
Approved.
Ms. Benner,
Approved.
Mr. Sweeney,
Approved.
and Ms. Hamilton. Approved.
Okay,
Motion to continue carries.
thank you. And we move on to other business, staff transition, the end of Stephanie and the beginning of Nolan, I guess.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not the end. So this is Nolan.
It's not the end of you.
Yeah. So Nolan is wonderful. He's been on our staff for like two and some change years now. Came on with us not long after I did during COVID. He's been staffing. When he first came on, he was assisting with pretty much all the boards and commissions, doing like buddy work. But he has specifically been staffing Rocky Fork for the last year and a half, doing a great job. So as the dominoes fall, Belkis is moving to downtown, I'm moving to university, and then Nolan is stepping into EFRB. We've been preparing for this transition on our side for a couple months now. So last month, Nolan was here just observing. This month, we kind of split the load, and then next month, Nolan's going to be running the show, but I'll be sitting over there to assist with any questions as needed. So yeah, that's kind of the timeline, and then it'll be the Nolan show starting in August. So
Well, welcome Nolan.
Yeah.
And Stephanie, thank you. You've been excellent in my opinion.
it's been a pleasure. I will miss you all. The UIDRB has big shoes to fill, in my opinion. So we'll see if they can live up to the EFRB.
Stephanie, I would add that I had your job at one time years and years ago at Worksy, and I think you do an amazing job. I know that the amount of information you have to process constantly and all the changes that happen, and I've just been very, very impressed. I look forward to working with you on other projects in the future.
Thank you. And you all can, you have my city email. You can reach out at any time if you have questions about anything East Franklinton related or not. But Nolan's going to be great. And then Nolan's buddy will be Shally. She is back there. So you will be seeing her as the person running your tech and the like going forward.
Good.
I just hope you're in a warmer room wherever you're.
Well, it's the same room. It's just on Thursdays instead of Wednesday. It starts at 4:00 instead of 3, so I don't think it's going to be any better. But
Well, the first district is a step up in degree of difficulty.
it's a step up in the volume, for sure, in the one, let's see, we had the UIDRB meeting last Thursday. So starting Friday, I've officially been like the staff person. And in that time, I've done like 3 times as many staff approvals as I've done in a year and a half. Yep.
Wow.
Not surprised. All right, and with
That's
that,
your reward for a job well done.
Yeah.
with that, we are adjourned. Thank you.
You.